כבוד הנשיא, אורחים נכבדים, מוזמנים יקרים. ממשלת ישראל קבעה שהנושא המרכזי בשנת העצמאות תשנ"ג הוא ירושלים בירת ישראל, ועל מנת לציין את מרכזיותה של ירושלים בחיי העם היהודי נכתבה וחוברה אמנת ירושלים. נתכנסנו כאן ביום ירושלים על מנת לחתום על האמנה. Hôtes distingués, chers invités, mesdames et messieurs, nous nous sommes réunis ici aujourd'hui avec des représentants du peuple d'Israël et responsables des communautés juives du monde entier pour signer le pacte de Jérusalem conclu par le peuple d'Israël il y a un an. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we have gathered here at the President's residence to take part in the signing ceremony of the Covenant of Jerusalem by representatives of the Jewish communities around the world. The content of the covenant is based on sources in the Torah, prophets and writings, in the Talmud, Midrash and liturgy, in our historical literature and in legislation of the Knesset. The essence of the covenant is an eternal binding treaty between the Jewish people and Jerusalem. תוכנה של אמנת ירושלים מבוסס על האמור בתנ"ך, בתלמוד, במדרש ובפיוט, בספרות ההיסטורית שלנו ובחוקי כנסת ישראל. היא נועדה לתת ביטוי לברית העמוקה והנצחית שבין העם היהודי לירושלים. אמנת ירושלים נחתמה לראשונה ביום ירושלים הקודם. הנה תמצית מתוך האמנה, כפי שנוסחה ונחתמה היום לפני שנה אחת. היום יום ירושלים 28 באייר, אלפים תשנ"ב, 1922 שנים לחורבן הבית השני, 44 שנים להקמת מדינת ישראל, 25 שנה למלחמת המגן של צבא הגנה לישראל, היא מלחמת ששת הימים, אשר בה הובקעו חומות העיר ושוחררו הר הבית וירושלים, 12 שנה מעת שנתכנסו חברי כנסת ישראל וחוקקו לאמור. ירושלים השלמה והמאוחדת היא בירת ישראל. מדינת ישראל היא מדינתו של העם היהודי, ובירת ישראל היא בירתו של עם ישראל. התכנסנו בציון ראשי עם ופרנסי קהילות לכרות ברית עם ירושלים, כאמנה אשר כרתו ראשי העם וכל איש ישראל בשוב ישראל מבבל לארצו. והעם וראשיו הורו לשבת בירושלים עיר הקודש. And now an excerpt in English from the Jerusalem Covenant. We have gathered together in Zion national leaders and heads of our communities everywhere to enter into a covenant with Jerusalem, as was done by the leaders of our nation and all the people of Israel upon Israel's return to its land from the Babylonian exile. And the people and their leaders vowed to dwell in Jerusalem, the holy city. Once again, our feet stand within thy gates, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem that is built as a city joined together, which unites the people of Israel to one another and links heavenly Jerusalem with earthly Jerusalem. Et ensuite, en langue française, des phrases choisies du pacte de Jérusalem. À nouveau, nous voilà dans ton enceinte, ô Jérusalem, Jérusalem qui est bâtie comme une ville d'une harmonieuse unité. Toi qui réunis Israël et qui relie la Jérusalem divine et la Jérusalem humaine. Aujourd'hui, comme jadis, nous faisons nôtres les paroles des prophètes d'Israël qui proclamèrent leur conviction que toutes les nations afflueraient à Jérusalem. Dans ce lieu, nous réitérons le serment. Si je t'oublie jamais, Jérusalem, que ma droite m'oublie. אם אשכחך ירושלים תשכח ימיני. תדבק לשוני לחיקי אם לא אזכרכי, אם לא אעלה את ירושלים על ראש שמחתי. ובכל זאת אנחנו כורתים אמנה וחותבים, ורסנוך לנו לעולם, ורסנוך באמונה בצדק ובמשפט, בחסד וברחמים. אהבת עולם אהבנוך ירושלים, אהבה בלי מצרים, בין המצרים ובעת שחרור מעול צרים. עלייך הורגנו, אלייך ערגנו, ובך דבקנו. נאמנותנו לך, לבנינו אחרינו הנחלנו, לעולמי עד, בך ביתנו. רביעיית כינורות המלך דוד, הישובה כאן לפניכם, תשמיע לנו אתה את הפרק אלגרו די מולטו, מתוך דיוונטימנטו מספר 137 ברשימת קהל, מאת וולפגנג אמדאוס מוצרט. The violins of King David, a string quartet, will now perform Allegro di Molto from Divertimento by Mozart. I now have the honor to call upon His Excellency the President of the State, Mr. Ezer Weizmann, to address the audience. אני מתכבד להזמין עתה את נשיא המדינה, מר עזר ויצמן, לשאת את דברו.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored and pleased that one of my first meetings and gatherings and talking to after having been elected is with you, ladies and gentlemen. You as the representatives of world Jewry that have come to Jerusalem to sign the covenant, to reaffirm the link of the Jews with Jerusalem and Jerusalem with the diaspora. כבוד הרב מרומניה, מה שלומך? And would like to say a few words and take it lovingly. It is terrific to see you all here in Jerusalem. It is nice and great to travel around the world and find a home here and there wherever you go. I served in the Second World War in the Royal Air Force, serving from South Africa to North Africa to the Far East in India and to England. The Goyim, I was an only Jew on a squadron. The Goyim used to say, come on, let's go into town and find some friends. They knew if I went to a synagogue and I went to a Jewish club, they could have company. And I could see the diaspora in the Second World War, not in Europe, obviously, and realized then how spread we are, how far away we are, and how united we are. But Israel is, was, and will be the center of world Jewry, and Jerusalem within it. Jerusalem is an eternal city, that's obvious. Jerusalem is a complicated, intricate, and phenomenal city. We, the Israelis, who lived 19 years with a divided Jerusalem, our dream was constantly, one day, to find ourselves at the Kotel, find ourselves in East Jerusalem. We, the breed of pilots, used to see it from the air. And I used to fly and look at it, and couldn't even touch it. Now, I am not sure, Rabbi Verdiger, would I believe always in miracles. But what happened in 1967 was a miracle. I think it's a known fact that in the morning of the 5th of June, we did not plan. Anyone who tells you that we did, send them to me. We did not plan taking Jerusalem. We did not plan to fight the Jordanians. We even didn't think very much about the Golan Heights. We wanted to have a go at the Egyptians that were giving us a rough time. We even sent a message to His Majesty across the Jordan River that it's not a business with him and us, but between us and the Egyptians. Could be it's God's hand. Could be it's a miracle. This morning I almost believed in it. Even then I started believing in it. It's like the story of Bilam that went out to curse at the Israelites. He went blessing them. So by shelling Jerusalem and hitting Israel, it was a blessing that we had to attack and take the Western Bank and Jerusalem within. If you would have asked me on the 5th of June in the morning, where will I have lunch the following day after the battle started? I would have said most likely with General Tal in El Arish. And I had lunch with Moshe Dayan and Uzi Narkis in the Hebrew University on Mount Scopus on the 6th of June in the morning. Going to the old laboratory of one of my uncles, I had a few uncles, not one, who was also a chemist, Moshe, and I went to his old laboratory in the university. I was dreaming that I saw still some of his writing on the blackboard. I think I was dreaming, but it was a fantastic feeling. When we came here, our ancestors, our generation, 110, 120 years ago, my good late mother was born in Rishon LeZion. My grandfather and great-grandfather are buried on Mount of Olives. Everybody always talks about Weizmanns. I had a mother too. And when they arrived, I think, if I may suggest, they were confronted with four interesting things. With hard weather, difficult weather, with drought, and with sickness. The weather we solve now with air conditioning. The drought we solve by irrigation. Sickness we solve with medicine. No more malaria, hardly any typhoid, hardly any dysentery. We solve it with medicine. But the fourth one, the Arabs, which is not a sickness, but we have to live with. There's no mechanical way of living. There's no scientific way of finding a way to do that. Here is where Judaism must come in. Do we live as neighbors, or do we constantly live as enemies? In many respects, the battle between us and the Arabs molded us. But enough is enough. And I do hope that what we had started 15, 16 years ago, 14 years ago, with achieving peace with the greatest Arab country, with Egypt, with all its troubles and tribulations, with all its ups and downs, is only an indication and a direction that could be we have to go not in all its ingredients. And now, thank God, we're in the midst of ups and downs, negotiations with all the Arab countries, with Syria, with Jordan, with Lebanon, and with the Palestinians. The future of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and as the united city, I don't believe will hardly be discussed. It came for discussion in Camp David, and we said what we said, and Sadat said what he said, and the Americans listened. So now more than ever, when we're approaching fruitful negotiations, I pray and I hope, when we approach days of decision, which are not going to be easy, when we approach difficult days, and on the other hand, Israel has started becoming an economic entity much better than what it was before. We are now in a much better situation economically. We are now have absorbed many respects due to you, and with your help, we have absorbed in 4 or 5 years 500,000 Jews. Some of them live a difficult life. A lot of them live an interesting life. I was in the technical exhibition yesterday with 40 countries participating, including China. But I mainly looked at our own exhibits. And I think there was a majority of Russian scientists who had all sorts of tricks and all sorts of tangled things, all sorts that I didn't understand half of it. And all of them with antennas in their heads and beautiful things, fascinating things that I hope that when they are created and eventually become goods to be sold, again will export more than the $15 billion that we do today. On one hand, Israel is, I wouldn't say booming, but you can see that you can hardly drive because of so many cars. You can hardly see an area which is not being built. You see the universities full of students, not enough. You see factories and plants blooming. And parallel to that, there's the negotiations about the future of the way we're going to live with our neighbors. Where I, as a child, used to go with my late father to Beirut, to Damascus, and later on to Cairo. I think it's the future of our good country and the future of Jerusalem, the way we're going to maneuver, discuss, argue, stand firm, lean backwards when it's necessary on the negotiations with the Arabs. As far as Jewry is concerned, I have my own opinion. You're close to Israel, you're close to Jerusalem. I would like to see you physically closer. Very physically closer. If not all of you, part of you. The future of Jewry and the future of Judaism is in Israel. You know more than I do what is the mixed marriages in the diaspora. You know, it's far better than me. People drop me 52% in New York, 60% in America, 70% in France. And we know what mixed marriages bring. I have a friend in New York who's married to an Israeli lady whose daughter was married a few months ago to a non-Jew. And he did me a great favor. He did himself a great favor. He had 2 weddings, one with a rabbi, one with a priest. As they say in good Yiddish, a Glick immer getroffen. And I don't want to preach, because it's easy to say to other people how to live and what to do. None of us like to be taught, and none of us like to be preached. But I do believe, sincerely and honestly and fundamentally, that the future of Jewry is in Israel. No matter what the future of Israel, as far as hardships and fights and battles, could be that we'll have more in the future. But from an essence point of view, from a demographic point of view, This is the only place. So I am glad to have the opportunity to talk to you. Next time, perhaps I'll do it more meticulously and prepare some statistics about the future of the Jewish people in the diaspora, and prepare some statistics about the future of Israel. Today, we are 4.2 million Jews now. We were 600,000 35 years ago. We were half of that when Jerusalem was liberated and united 26 years ago, which was a phenomenal battle. And I do hope, I ask you, in my position, I can only dare say, I demand from you to see the future of your families, all of them, part of them, next generation, next generation, having roots in Israel, preferably in Jerusalem, because by that you will solidify, you'll consolidate, you'll bring the future of Israel, of Jews, to safe coasts. I apologize to the non-English speaking gentlemen and ladies. My French is bad. I'll conclude one thing that is also typical of Jewish history, what Mendes Fans once told me. I was Air Force commander, and I took him for a visit in the Air Force, the best one in the world. And I said to him, Monsieur le Président, please, may I speak English? My French is not good enough. After all, we were occupied by the British for 30 years. He looked at me smiling and said, you don't know how lucky you were not occupied by the French. So with this little note, which also typifies we're occupied by the French, occupied by the British, we're not occupied by anybody now. We live as free people in this country. To make it a good, healthy, solid country with no problems in the future, a lot depends on you, a lot depends on us. The cooperation between the two of us will make it. Thank you very much.
אני מתכבד להזמין עתה את יושבת ראש הוועדה היהודית האמריקנית לחגיגות ה-25 לירושלים, הגברת שושנה קרדין, לשאת את דברה. I now have the honor to call upon the chairperson of the Jerusalem 25 Committee, the leading Jewish American committee for the planning of Yom Yerushalayim festivities, Mrs. Shoshana Kardin, to address the audience.
Mr. President, revered rabbis, distinguished Jewish leaders from throughout the world, it is an honor and a privilege for me to be here this morning as the representative of the Coordinating Committee for Jerusalem 25 of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. This is a thrilling time, Mr. President, and an auspicious beginning for what I know will be an outstanding addition to your public service career. The elements outside have agreed that this is to be a beautiful day. We wish you a hatzlacha in all that you undertake.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
This is a special occasion, and we have heard your message, Mr. President, a special occasion because we have come here to celebrate the reunification of Jerusalem. Jerusalem united. Jerusalem, the capital of Medinat Yisrael, the eternal united capital of Medinat Yisrael, and the Jerusalem, the capital of the Jewish people, also the eternal capital of the Jewish people. The symbolic signing of Emנת Yerushalayim is just that, a symbolic signing. For those of us in this room have signed with our hearts and our minds decades ago that Jerusalem is the center of the Jewish people and that Israel is the center of the Jewish people. And we are here to reaffirm that and to pledge to you that all of our efforts and energies will be directed in that fashion. We are also here to add actions to the words. We have heard the history of Jerusalem again and again in the past few days. We have met the heroes of liberation. We have met the outstanding leaders who have the challenge now of seeing to it that Jerusalem remains united, the capital of Israel forever. But we have a responsibility Even though the term Shalu Shalom Yerushalayim is the theme for today's celebration and for this celebration, I urge all of us to leave here with that as a charge. Jerusalem is not yet recognized as the capital of Israel throughout the world. It is we who represent the Jewish organizations in the many, many countries throughout our globe who must go back now and begin to work both politically, emotionally, and socially to see to it that our countries, in fact, recognize the political capital of Jerusalem, the political capital of the State of Israel, as being Jerusalem united. And I pledge to you, Mr. President, that we will carry that out. To all of us, as we approach Shavuot, let me wish you Chag Sameach, a celebration in which we will recognize how blessed we are. I do believe in miracles, Mr. President, and I believe that it is a miracle that we are here, those of us of my generation, to see Medinat Yisrael, Jerusalem united, and pray that there will be shalom for all. Toda rabah.
אני מתכבד להזמין עתה את נשיא הארגון המרכזי של הקהילות היהודיות בצרפת, שהוא גם נשיא הקהילה הכלל-אירופית, מר ז'אן-פייר בנסאר, לשאת את דברו. Mesdames et messieurs, j'ai l'honneur d'inviter le président du consistoire central de France et président du consistoire européen, monsieur Jean-Pierre Bansard, à prendre la parole.
Monsieur le Président, en ce moment historique de la réunion des délégués de l'ensemble des communautés juives du monde entier dans Jérusalem unifiée, Jérusalem enfin de retour depuis 25 ans à ses enfants légitimes, me remplit d'émotion et à la fois de joie. Consacré depuis à Abraham être le lieu de résidence du nom, Jérusalem est resté pour les Juifs, à travers l'histoire, le réceptacle de leurs prières et le but ultime de toute leur inspiration. Aucun autre peuple au monde n'a jamais fait de Jérusalem sa capitale. Aucun autre peuple ne l'a tant pleuré que le peuple juif quand elle était captive. Aucun autre peuple que le peuple juif l'a tant célébré quand elle a connu la joie du retour de l'exil. Toute notre littérature traditionnelle, depuis la Bible et le Talmud, et jusqu'aux écrits des poètes et des rabbins, est remplie de son nom, de sa beauté et de sa sainteté. Les nations ont tout tenté pour séparer le peuple juif. Elles l'ont rasé, elles l'ont brûlé, elles l'ont pillé. Elles ont même tenté d'en faire oublier le nom et de lui substituer un nom étranger, Elia Capitolina. Rien n'y fit. À Jérusalem, comparé à la veuve pleurant, dans la nuit répondait la complainte de ses enfants plongés dans la nuit de l'exil. Cet attachement éternel et impérissable a conduit naturellement, grâce à la puissance du Verbe, des prophètes d'Israël et à la foi juive, aux retrouvailles que nous avons vécues. En 1948, quand le monde a reconnu notre légitimité sur la Terre Sainte. En 1967, quand Jérusalem fut réunifiée. Et aujourd'hui, quand nous proclamons solennellement notre unité à sa judéité. Au nom du consistoire central, Monsieur le Président, et de l'Union des communautés juives de France, au nom du Conseil européen des organisations consistoriales que regroupe l'ensemble du judaïsme européen, je vous apporte l'expression de notre détermination à soutenir le combat d'Israël pour Jérusalem, sa capitale et la capitale de la paix.
עתה הגענו למעמד החתימה על אמנת ירושלים. כבוד הנשיא מר עזר ויצמן מוזמן לחתום ראשון על המגילה. בבקשה.
יפה. בעברית ככה. Thank you.
ועתה יוזמנו נציגי הקהילות היהודיות ברחבי העולם לחתום על המגילה. I shall now call upon the representatives of the Jewish communities throughout the world to come and sign the Jerusalem Covenant on behalf of the Jewry of the world. בשם קהילות יבשת צפון אמריקה מוזמן לחתום יושב ראש ועידת הנשיאים מר לסטר פולק. On behalf of the Jewish communities of North America, Chairman of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, Mr. Lester Polak. בשם קהילת יהודי דרום אפריקה, יושב ראש חבר הנאמנים של הסוכנות היהודית מר מנדל קפלן. On behalf of the Jewish community in South Africa, the chairman of the Board of Governors of the Jewish Agency, Mr. Mendel Kaplan. בשם קהילות אוסטרליה, ניו זילנד ומרחב האוקיינוס השקט, המשנה ליושב ראש הקונגרס היהודי העולמי, מר איזי ליבלר. On behalf of the Jewish communities in Australia, New Zealand and the Pacific region, the co-chairman of the World Jewish Congress, Mr. Izzy Liebler. בשם קהילות יהודי מערב אירופה ומרכזה, נשיא ארגון הגג של קהילות יהודי אירופה, מר Jean-Pierre Bansard. Au nom de communautés juives en Europe, le président du consistoire européen, monsieur Jean-Pierre Bansard. Monsieur Marcel Goldstein, le président de l'appel juif unifié et membre directeur du FSJU. Monsieur Jean Kahn, président du Congrès juif européen et du CRIF. בשם יהודי אלג'יריה ברחבי העולם, מר רוג'ה פינטו. Au nom des juifs algériens à travers le monde, monsieur Roger Pinto, président de Siona. בשם קהילות הפדרציה הרוסית, דוקטור מיכאל צ'לנוב, נשיא הפדרציה. בשם יהודי מרוקו, בארץ ובתפוצות, מר סלומון אזולאי ממרוקו. Au nom de juifs marocains, en Israël et dans la diaspora, monsieur Salomon Azoulay de Casablanca. בשם קהילת יהודי בריטניה, נשיא הקהילה השופט ישראל פיינשטיין. On behalf of the Jewish community in the United Kingdom, the community's president, Judge Israel Feinstein. בשם קהילות יהודי דרום אמריקה, נשיא קהילת ארגנטינה, הדוקטור רובן ברכה. On behalf of the Jewish community in South America, the President of the Community of Argentina, Dr. Ruben Beracha. כידיד מסור של ירושלים, יחתום עתה מר מוריס וול. The Jerusalem Covenant will also be signed by a devoted patron of Jerusalem, Mr. Maurice Wall, Commander of the Order of the British Empire, Fellow of King's College and President of the Jerusalem Great Synagogue. ועתה יוזמן אל הדוכן מר פרדי בן אהרון, אשר יעניק לנשיא מדליון של זהב שהופק במיוחד לכנס ההזדהות ושמו ירושלים של זהב. האדונים פרנסיס קליפה ודוד סעדה מוזמנים להגיש לנשיא ספר חתימות של אמנת ירושלים. ובחזרה אל הצלילים. רביעיית כינורות המלך דוד תסיים את חלקה בטקס ברומנסה מתוך מוסיקת ליל זעירה מאת מוצרט. בבקשה. וכאן, גבירותיי ורבותיי, מגיע הטקס לסיומו. אנא הישארו במקומותיכם עד צאת כבוד הנשיא ופמלייתו מן האולם. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the signing ceremony of the Jerusalem Covenant. You are kindly requested to remain seated until the President of the State and his retinue have left the hall. Thank you all for having been with us. תודה לכם על שהייתם עמנו ואנו מאחלים לכם יום ירושלים נעים. All guests present here are welcome to sign the covenant. You'll be able to do so on your way out in the garden, where the covenant scroll will be exhibited to the public for signing. מגילת האמנה תוצב עתה ברחבת הגן ליד האולם, ובצאתכם החוצה תוכלו לצרף חתימתכם.
May I have a small suggestion? I will not leave, I'll have a cup of coffee with all. Okay?
אין צורך לתרגם. חן חן, שלום ולהתראות.
Go ahead. You're welcome, of course.
לא היה נשיא כזה. כל משפט שהוא אומר זה או חכם או מצחיק.
Bravo, très bien.
Merci.
Très professionnel.
Merci.